Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today I'm very honored to be sitting down with British Ambassador to Cambodia, Tina Redshaw. And during this interview, we will discuss British support for climate action for developing countries, particularly in Cambodia. So why climate change today? While we're sitting here with Ambassador, many worldwide have been affected by the climate crisis. For example, like drought, flood, and many extreme weather events. And many people living in poor countries become more vulnerable to climate crisis. And while right now we are grappled by the pandemic COVID-19, many countries are directing their resources to dealing with the crisis pandemics rather than stepping up their effort to deal with the climate change. So we agree that this climate breakdown is more important, and refocusing and directing our focus on this issue will be more critical than ever. That's why we're discussing this today. And also the UK will host the COP26 this year. That's why this is more important to discuss, and what kind of projects that the UK will be focusing on to support the other country worldwide. So without further delay, I would like to start the interview with Ambassador Tina Redshaw. Ambassador, thank you for having you today. Yeah. And let me begin the interview because United Kingdom actually have put climate action at the forefront of its foreign policy. We have seen that International Climate Fund partnering with developing countries worldwide have been initiated. And I would like to know, for example, like in Cambodia, what kind of existing projects that your country have been implementing to support Cambodia in dealing with this crisis?
Okay, I think it's not only about projects and financing, it's also about support and discussions with the relevant government ministries. So we have a dedicated climate change policy officer here who is regularly talking with the climate change team in the Ministry of Environment under the Minister and the Secretary General, His Excellency Tin Phon Lok, to find out more about Cambodia's climate change ambition. At the moment that Cambodia is going through the consultations and the development of its renewal of the NDCs, the nationally determined contributions, and we have been talking very closely with the team to find out what that means. In terms of projects, there has been financial assistance from a number of different departments of the UK government, and that includes from the Green Climate Fund, a look at some climate-friendly agri-business sort of policies and value chain development, which is obviously agriculture is one of the areas that it gets very hard hit by any change in climate, and of course the recent floods. There are other climate investment funds where Cambodia has been able to draw on money to invest and build particularly institutional capacity to be able to embed climate policies into a mainstream climate policies across different ministries, and that might include issues around climate resilience into sort of development plans, climate proofing, water management systems, and also as well as rural and urban infrastructure.
From an outsider, you're a foreign ambassador here, so you will see differently from the local. Can you tell us how do you see the current effort undertaken by the Cambodian government and also the relevant partner and the stakeholder?
I think Cambodia is taking climate change very seriously. I think that I've heard people in the governments talk about the impact of extreme weather events, and it would appear that Cambodia is being hit by more climate weather events, and as we've just seen with the recent flooding, if that becomes a more frequent event, then the impact that it will have on particularly on the agricultural sector, and then of course on the wider economy is really big. So I think that along with many other countries across the region, Cambodia is looking very seriousseriously at what it needs to do, what new policies it needs to bring in across a whole swathe of activity. And there's obviously issues around lowering emissions. Adaptation resilience is something that the Ministry of Environment talks about a lot, obviously as still a majorly agricultural economy, then it is really, really important that everything that can be done is done to ensure the integrity of the agricultural economy.
I see. So what about normal citizens? How you
but normal
observe
citizens?
That,
I don't know. I don't know how much awareness across the whole population there is. I think you do see quite a lot of awareness in young people. I think you can see that from young people joining in activities that are, they might not appear to be necessarily directly about climate change, but young people are interested in the environment. They want to ensure that plastic pollution decreases, for example. I think more young people are going out and enjoying nature, and so the fact that they're doing that, they don't want the forests to disappear or the weather to get so bad that those sorts of activities can't be enjoyed. So I think that there is a growing awareness amongst young people. There's obviously a lot that they can access online and that they do access online. So I think it is important. It is, after all, their future.
I see. In terms of changing behavior, it's not only in Cambodia that remains difficult. What about in the UK? Is there anything you want to share? How can we expedite this kind of behavioral change to normal citizens?
I mean, I think that government policies that incentivize people to reduce their emissions is really important. And that might be increasing the use of public transport, increasing perhaps walking or cycling to work instead of jumping in a car. The Prime Minister Johnson has just this week announced a 10-point plan for what he's calling a new green industrial revolution. And one of the policies in there is to actually bring forward the date whereby we will ban the sale of new diesel and petrol cars. The government had announced that. I think the original date would have been 2035, but we've brought that forward to 2030. And I think incentives like that demonstrate that the government is expecting people to change their habits, and clearly for more developed countries, but probably Cambodia needs to look at its transport emissions as well. But I think in developed countries, then reducing the dependence on petrol and diesel cars that really do emit a lot into the atmosphere is really, really important. But that's only one area. I mean, other areas are finding better ways to, more energy efficient ways to heat our homes. That's not a problem in Cambodia, but more energy efficient air conditioners is something that is worth thinking about here. So I think that people need educating. They do need to have access to information about what climate change is and how it is affecting all of us, how it is affecting the planet as a whole if we don't make changes. But then I think that in order to drive some of that behavioural change, then governments do need to incentivise and make policies that will drive people's behavioural change.
Let's move to a more substantial issue, scientifically proven. I would say fuels and diesel, the energy, coal power plants, so on and so forth, still becomes the dominant source of energy in developing country, particularly in Cambodia. We're moving toward that, sadly, I would like to say. But to you, from your perspective, how hard it is to make sure that we are moving away. We have coal power phase out. I think the UK is also leading, because I think in 2017 I've heard that, I've seen this launchings in Bonn, Germany. So to you, how hard it is to move away from coal power and other dirty, very polluting energy source, for example in Cambodia?
Of course, a country like Cambodia, a developing country, sees its energy demand increasing, and therefore it needs to be able to keep up with that, keep pace with that demand. I mean, talking to relevant officials recently, COVID-19 obviously has had an impact, and perhaps the demand that was sort of being expected on a trajectory going up like this has maybe dropped off a little bit. But as we recover from the pandemic, then of course energy demand will continue to rise, and that is a challenge for governments to provide the energy that its citizens expect and that business expect, at the same time as introducing renewable. But a country like Cambodia has already seen, and it's been proven, that solar farms can get built very quickly, can provide electricity quickly at a lower cost than coal. Now, of course, there are always issues of connectivity, transmission, and solar doesn't give 24-hour power in the way that coal can. So I think that developing countries need to find a balance of really working hard to increase the percentage of renewable technologies and renewable energy generation into the mix, at the same time as, you know, we are seeing new technologies coming on stream. We're seeing the price of new technologies dropping. I mean, battery technology is going to be really important if we're going to see a real increase in solar power, because unless you can kind of harness and retain that power generated from solar, then you've obviously got 12 hours, at least around 12 hours a day, where no power can be produced. So, and battery technology is still a bit limited. But again, we've seen the price of solar drop so rapidly that I'm very confident that we will also see the price of battery technology dropping, and I think that will make a huge change to the ability of developing countries to sort of afford to be able to turn their back on coal.
Interesting. Because you raised post-pandemic time, we are looking to that. We're still uncertain when it's going to an end. But it should be green, it should be more sustainable, it should be more clean. So in terms of expediting energy transition here in Cambodia, is there any plan your country have been doing already, or is there any plan you want to unveil in the future to support this country?
We have a number of opportunities to work with Cambodia. We've invited Cambodia onto something called the Energy Transition Council, which is an alliance of countries that will support each other to look at transiting away from dirty fuels. So we have that. Obviously, through our chairmanship of COP, we are pushing countries hard to be more ambitious. In fact, on the 12th of December, we will be hosting, along with France and the UN and Chile, the Climate Ambition Summit. And that gives an opportunity for countries to announce their ambition, and we are looking for ambition. If a country doesn't have sufficient ambition, they might not be able to be able to speak at that summit. But I think it's really important that we will be keeping up a series of events and opportunities to really encourage the world to come together and be ambitious for reducing their emissions and reaching and giving us announcing to the world their targets to reach net zero carbon in whether that's in 20 years, 30 years, whatever. I mean, we have seen in the recent past months a number of countries who have been announcing their net zero, and that includes countries in Asia, so China, Japan, South Korea. And I think that with large emitters making those announcements, then that can give smaller countries encouragement that you know, if they also are ambitious and perhaps courageous in their target setting, then there is the opportunity to meet the overall Paris Agreement target of keeping global warming under 1.5 degrees.
Yeah. My last question for Cambodian issue. Is there any opportunity for private sector to get involved in climate action, resiliency, climate adaptation, energy issue, especially from your country? Is there any potential sector that your country business people are looking for to invest in Cambodia in terms of this issue?
I mean, there are certainly a few UK companies who are looking in the energy sector. So bringing in expertise, perhaps in solar, but also, you know, there are other companies who are doing work on batteries, for example, or on wind power development. And wind power in Cambodia is at the moment is not proven, although you might have seen that during Clean Energy Week, a wind farm developer, Supporntier, won a Clean Energy Advocate Award, which I think is really important because, again, the more sources of renewable energy a country can access, then the easier it is to enable a larger percentage of renewable technologies in the energy mix.
Yeah, I see. So let me move to the last part, on the COP26, which is going to be held in the UK, Glasgow, Scotland, if I'm not mistaken. We're looking to that. Many people out there are looking to that while we are discussing the issue when it comes to, because the COVID undermines our effort. Many countries are really ignoring stepping up the climate action. So we're moving to COP26, which your country will be the host. So the further scrutiny will be on climate finance. It's also an elephant in the room too. So as the economically advanced country and also the home to the first industrial revolution, the UK. So how do you see your own responsibility to support the least developed country to move forward with this and unite together to deal with the climate change while the world seems to be more divided?
The UK takes its responsibility very seriously, and we have this year announced that we have doubled our commitment to providing international climate finance. So that now sits at 11.6 billion sterling. So that's what, nearer to 15 billion US dollars. And as we spoke about earlier, we are working through our embassies, through our climate change network. We are working across the world to help developing countries with climate finance, to look at capacity building, to look at adaptation and resilience measures, as well as to look at changes to within the energy transition. But as COP chair next year, then a big part of our role is also to work alongside other developed countries to ensure that they are also playing their part to not just to lower their own emissions, but also to provide climate finance and to help, to give a helping hand to those countries who can't necessarily afford it. I think, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic has put some things on hold, but I think the recovery from COVID, the economic recovery of COVID, of course, gives us an opportunity as well. It gives us the opportunity to really try to build back better, to build back in a greener way, to have a green recovery, and to make our futures more sustainable. I think that what COVID has done is it has made people look at the intersection between human activity and nature, for example, and therefore I think that's a really important element of the response and the rebuilding of economies around the world after COVID. And we haven't spoken about sort of deforestation, afforestation. Obviously another really important challenge is how we ensure that forest cover in countries around the world is either retained or is put back for reforesting, because trees are a very important form of absorbing carbon, and that is one way that countries can address the issue of reducing their emissions and becoming carbon neutral, is to ensure that forest cover is not depleted anymore, in order that countries retain their carbon sinks.
I see. You talk a lot about the UK's plans and what it is going to do as the chairs of the COP. But if I ask you one thing you expect that our country and other developing country would like to expect from your leadership, what would you name? One thing.
I think commitment to making things better, and commitment to the aims of the Paris agreements 5 years ago, that will ensure that the world does not, the world's warming does not rise above 1.5 degrees.
Yeah, I see. It's my very last question. As we talked earlier, addressing climate crisis will involve not only policy but diplomacy, a change in people behavior, a change in commitment you mentioned moments ago. Are you optimistic as a diplomat that we will be able to address this issue and save the world, the planet from the climate period?
I am optimistic because, as I said earlier, we are seeing countries come forward with certainly an ambition to reach carbon net zero carbon, and perhaps we didn't expect to see so many of the larger emitters to come forward. Just a few months ago we probably didn't expect that. So I think that is showing already some very helpful momentum. There's still a long way to go, but I think that whether as a diplomat, whether as a concerned citizen, young people, as I say, I think they are very much part of the growing trend to say, it's our future, we want something better. In fact, this week there is a young people's COP that has been organised by young people around the world, and they are doing a series of online events and workshops and talks. Because now should have been the COP had COVID not intervened. And I think that shows a great willingness by an enthusiasm by young people to actually also have their say. In fact, our COP president, Alok Sharma, Minister Sharma, is speaking on the first day of that what they're calling the mock COP. So yes, I have to be optimistic, because as long as we all combine and bring the best of everybody's endeavours, whether that's at the government level, as policymakers, or as the private sector in terms of actually the innovation and the goods that can make a difference, and of course people's individual behavioural change that you've spoken about.
So we will be there addressing this crisis.
Yes.
Thank you, Ambassador, for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much.